All right, we are recording, and it's Knolly Williams here. I'm here with Dinko, and Dinko just moved here from Salt Lake City not too long ago. Welcome, Dinko.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, Dinko's an accomplished agent, guys. He was very accomplished in Salt Lake City, but now he's in Texas, and his question is like, you know, how do we do contracts here? Like, how do we put the documents together? So we're actually going to do a whole video together, Dinko and I, just to walk you through the whole process. I'm gonna walk Dinko through it, answer all his questions. But he's being a good sport. I felt like it would be a good call to record so that any of you that join Mentorship Masters in the Texas area could also use this information in the future. Saves me a lot of time too, right, Dinko?
Yep, absolutely. And I'm sure I'm going to ask all the questions that anybody's going to have. So I think you'll get
Yeah,
covered in one sitting.
you're very thorough. You're very thorough. Okay, so do you want? I'll get started, or let me just give you a quick overview, Dinko, and then I'll answer your questions. I think it'll be better that way.
Yeah, let's do that.
So one of the big questions, and I'm going to share my screen. One of the big questions that a lot of people have is about, particularly what documents do I include? Now, can you see my screen, Dinko?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into zip form and just kind of show you, we in Texas, we use zip forms through EXP. It's now the cool thing about zip forms for me is that I've been using it since the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with it. And one of the questions that Dinko, like these are some of the properties that I have in my zip forms now. But one of the big things that I like about zip forms is, I call them zip forms, it's actually zip form, is that they have templates, okay? So when you work with templates, you don't necessarily need checklists. Like in the old days, and some of my transaction coordinators still like checklists, actually. They like to have like a checklist, and I actually had an electronic checklist that I kept on a Google Doc, in a Sheets doc, and I would actually just copy paste that checklist every single time that I had a new listing, and then I would just check off the items and make sure I had them all.
Yeah.
But now, since you have SkySlope, have you used SkySlope much, Dinko?
Yeah. Yep. That's what I actually used in Utah. So I like that part.
Okay, good, good. So SkySlope will tell you more or less, okay, this is what we need. But if you're kind of in the learning process and you just want to know, okay, what the heck do I need? What I found is templates works really better to keep me on track. So in zip form, I use templates. And if you look here, you can see I've got the EXP new listing template. I've got a short sale contract template. I've got a buyer purchase offer template. I've got a new short sale listing template, and I've got a lease template. Okay, so these are all my standard templates that I use. And if you go into each of these, like for example, the new listing template, it automatically populates with whatever. It already has all the docs that are necessary for a new listing. Okay, so whenever I start a set of documents for a listing, I just apply the template to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a new listing, I already know that we're going to need an exclusive, 1 to 4 family contract, basically, an estimated net proceeds, the IABS form, which is information about brokerage services. I throw this in, although it's not necessary. It's not required. General information and notice to a buyer and seller. And then there's a wire fraud warning notice. And then there's a seller's disclosure. So whenever we do a listing, now some listings do have HOAs, and I don't automatically. What I used to do is I would include the HOA document into my standard listing template.
Yeah.
But what I found is that some have HOAs, some don't, and inevitably the buyer agent will include an HOA addendum when they turn in the offer.
Yeah.
So I don't even include it anymore in the listing paperwork. So so I just want
I have a quick question actually about that. One thing that I noticed is a lot of listing agents will have the addendum uploaded in Matrix,
right.
and on there they have it marked that the buyer does not require the documents and seller will not deliver them. So does that mean if there was any litigation issues, or if like the budgeting is not correct, then this buyer cannot use that to back out, since they're saying they're not going to be sending that? So it kind of
Correct.
be a so as a buyer's agent, you'd want to not probably sign that one and write
Correct.
up a
Yeah, you wouldn't want to sign that one. And I've never I don't recommend that. Like, that's kind of a disservice. That is an option on the checklist, on the HOA checklist. I mean, there's three different options, and that's one of them. But I would never, like, when I would pre-populate, like what you're saying, and I would upload those to.
yeah.
I would just basically say that the seller would provide those, and that and then down under the cost, I would put that the seller would pay, X amount, and then the buyer would pay whatever the difference was,
Yeah.
So, I mean, those could actually be written in favor of the buyer or the seller.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're letting the buyer agent draw it up, it's going to be written more in favor of the buyer. But with my sellers, I always tell them, if you're in an HOA, with an HOA, you pay to get in and you pay to get out.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like it's a responsibility of the seller to provide that information, because they chose to be in the HOA. Now, the buyer is actually buying into the HOA as well.
Yeah.
But if somebody's buying into the HOA that you're already in, why wouldn't you provide that information? So
yeah, I mean, that's the one that threw me off, because in Utah it was already in the purchase contract that the seller would provide. Like, there was no questions about
right.
it. Like, you were going to provide it, and then there was no cost. Like, all of the HOA stuff was pretty much free, like to get the docs. So
okay.
Here there's a charge.
That's how it should be. Yeah, that's how it should be. Yeah, it's a racket, man.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that you've been paying the HOA fee. Now you're looking to sell it. Plus, the buyer's going to pay you $400 to get in anyway. So now you're getting this. So here they're making the seller pay like a couple $100 and the buyer a couple $100.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I understood that right, because that was. I guess it's kind of harder when you're trying to unlearn and learn something. So you're kind of like, hold on, that's not right. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm not in Utah anymore.
Yeah. And we can specifically go over the HOA addendum if you want toward the end of this session. It's kind of a more minor point, so I don't want to spend up too much time.
I mean, that one's just like a minute. I mean, you can just, Yeah,
and I always tell my seller, I prepare them for things like this, is that, being part of an HOA has its benefits, its perks, and it has its drawbacks. And one of the drawbacks is when you sell, you're going to pay.
Yeah.
Now, the buyer is also going to pay to get into the HOA. There's an entrance fee. I call it an exit fee, but they call it, transfer fee or something, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is, man.
And does the seller have to pay the HOA docs even if it doesn't close? Like, let's say the buyer was to back out and the seller changed their mind.
Yeah.
Does the seller still have to pay that, or is it only paid upon closing?
Well, the way I do, it depends on the title company you work with. So the title company that I've partnered with, I use Independence Title, and I've done a lot of deals with them. So they don't typically it's not always the case, but they don't typically ask my seller to pay for it up front. Even though the technically it is supposed to be paid for when it's ordered, and sometimes very, very rarely they will ask for that. And technically, they probably should ask the seller to pay for it.
Yeah.
But my title company usually will foot that, and then they would just throw it on the settlement statement and have the seller pay it at closing.
Okay.
Which is just a more feel-good way of doing it. Now, if the seller does happen to pay for it in advance, it's not a big deal because they've already paid for it and they can use that on the next transaction.
Okay.
Those documents. So just going back to the whole issue of a checklist, once I figured out, okay, essentially what I did, because EXP has few different requirements for documentation than even Keller Williams had. So what I did was I once I figured out through SkySlope what was required, and then EXP has their own checklist, which is confusing because when you look at the checklist, some of those things are optional and some things are not for every property. So when I do my templates, I do them in such a way, like here's a short sale contract. There's just 3 documents that are needed, for that. And obviously that's information that I know. But initially you would want to know, like if I'm doing a buyer purchase offer, I know that in a purchase offer, I'm going to need all these things. I need a 1 to 4 family contract, a third party financing addendum. This is the addendum for the mandatory members in the association, HOA thing. The IABS, information about brokerage services, the buyer tenant representation agreement. If you don't already have that, the general information and notice for your protection and wire fraud notice. So this is all the documentation that I have when I'm working with a buyer purchase, situation. Now within Zip Form, you also do have checklists that you can use. I've never set those up. And obviously they would be.
And SkySlope has it, so.
Yeah, SkySlope has it already, so it's not really necessary. But as a first timer, I could see how a checklist would be advantageous. But I would highly recommend that you use templates, and that way when you draw up a new transaction, you don't have to remember what documents go into the transaction.
Yeah.
It just will automatically populate them with the correct documents. Do you know how to do that?
Yeah, I've looked at some videos. I don't have it organized like this, so I was using a mixture of dot loop and that. But I'm gonna just set up the SkySlope.
Yeah. So if I go in to add a new transaction, I just click new, and then I'll say, it's a new listing, new purchase. I'll say, well, it's a new listing, and then I'll put in the property. Usually I put the property address. Well, let me do this one. I'll just run through one real quick. 2020 Petrified Forest Drive. That's my old address. Then I'll hit residential, and then status active. And then right here, it's going to ask me to select a template. That's where this comes into play. So all I'm going to do is go down and select the new listing template that I've already set up, and then I'll hit save. And now this will create my transaction with all the documents automatically populated into that transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what if you need to add a document like an amendment or anything like that? Can you add it once you have a template? Or?
Yeah, super easy.
Okay.
Yeah, super easy. So all I'm going to do over here is go to forms, and I'll look for.
And that doesn't mess with your original setup, right? Okay.
No. And you can even like I say, I need to add this addendum for the HOA, and then it just adds it.
Okay.
Now it's down here. See, so you can have a template with documents already, what I call striped in, and then you could say, this property is going to need these extra forms, and then you add.
Can you put like all the EXP and your information and everything on those templates already, and then they're already pre-populated?
That's the whole point. Yeah, that's the whole point of having a template. So let's go back. That's a great question. So let's go back to the templates, and let's look at this, a new listing template. So this is my residential listing template, and everything that is everything that I can add here and populate, I do have it.
Okay.
So all the broker information is here. The only thing that's not here is the seller information with the property, and then the property description. And then on the next thing, I have it striped in automatically, like I teach you guys: 6% of sale price, 7% of sale price, or 8% of sale price. That's what I have populated into the document. So whenever I go on the listing, I tell my prospect, hey, we're going to go ahead and do yours at 6%. And then I cross out the 7 and 8%, and then I initial next to it. And psychologically, it implants in their head, I'm giving them my lowest rate.
Yeah,
Um,
that
and
makes
then
sense.
and then right here in the reimbursable expenses, I have $595 payable to the Knolly team at closing.
Okay.
I have my protection period, 180 days. Travis County, I put in here. I have all this stuff checked. Buyer will file this listing with on one or more of these, because you have to tell them when you're going to file the listing in MLS. And what I check is I say, a broker will place the property on the MLS once photos have been taken and seller has completed the home prep.
Okay.
Because you don't want to promise that you'll have it on MLS within 5 days.
Yeah.
They may not be ready to have it on MLS.
Yeah. I mean, things change. I mean, yeah. I mean, so yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I can actually run through this with you a little better than I'm doing now, but I just want to show you how it's populated. The broker is authorized to put the key box. I have that checked. 3% going to the other agent.
And I tried putting 0, but zip forms won't let me. Is it okay if that stays blank, the subagent? Does that just mean 0
Down
then?
here, non-MLS.
Well, see where you have A1 and A2
Uh-huh.
above? So like
Oh,
A2,
I just leave it blank.
okay, I was trying to put 0 and zip forms wouldn't allow me to, but it's okay if it's blank.
Yeah, if I
Oh,
can put
yours lets you?
but
Weird.
but but the thing is, if zip form, if you ever can't add something to a field, just hit your space key, and then you should be able to add it.
Okay.
It's just a little quirky that way. So if there's a field where it won't let you add something, like here, I can't put the letter J in, but if I hit my space key, now I can type in.
Oh, okay, cool.
You know, that's a little trick. You know.
Okay.
But yeah, you could put 0% if you just want to be more thorough. You know.
Is there any way to eliminate like the 3.000 or
Yeah, I can. I think I can. Let me. I've never tried to do it. Let me see. No, maybe not.
I tried, but I mean, no worries.
No, it won't let me do it. I don't want to get got me in this calculator thing. Yeah, no, I haven't. Uh, and honestly, I'll show you how I go through the paperwork with the seller, because I have a unique technique
Okay.
that I use that really saves me a lot of time. So I blew this up and now I can't make it smaller. So I have all these checked: conventional, VA, FHA, cash. Obviously, it won't always apply that way. So when you go into the actual document, when you're working with the transaction, uh, after you've applied the template to it, you can go in and make any changes to the document you want.
Yeah.
As long as you don't change the template. The template is like a once and done.
Okay.
Um, and so you get the idea, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So as
Yeah,
much.
I ran through it. I just put one together this morning. So
Okay. Good. Good.
I had a question on the section part, because in Utah, all we had to do was put an address on one paper, and it was actually just like the street address, and that's it. On the part where it says the addition, that's just like the addition, like if it's Firethorn Section West 2, right? That's just what phase it was built in. Like
Yes.
that's kind of the subdivision name. Is that what it is?
Let me show you. Let me show you what that is. That's a good question.
Because I'm pulling up one now, and it's in an older area, so it's not in a suburb, and it just says Irvington. So is that all I would put, Irvington?
It's actually the legal description is what goes there. But I'll show you. I'll show you what that looks like. Let me go to. Let me see. I've got a listing appointment today. I've got one tomorrow and one Sunday.
Nice.
So I'll show you. That's the retired life for you. As soon as you tell everybody you're retired, they come out the woodwork.
Same thing like when you're going to go on vacation, right? It's like
Yeah,
everyone.
same thing. Same thing happens when you go on vacation. You start picking them up. So what I do is I pull up tax record, and in Texas, when you go to legal description, that's what you're going to use for that section. So you see where it says lot 15, block 9. All this right here is what goes into that.
The University Hills Section 2, but the lot and block is on its own, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
lot here, block here, and then the rest of the legal description there.
Let me see if this one has it. I don't want to mess up the Zoom, because mine is like very touchy. Let's see if it'll let me. I want to see. Did it kick me out? Of course. I'll just send you. I'll just send you a picture when we're done.
Of what you're okay. So
Yeah.
like for example, this one that I'm going on, I'll show you one that's already filled in so you can get the idea. Um, this is the contract already filled in. And so now I've got, the homeowner's information, and then I've got the lot number is 15, the block number is 9, and then it's University Hills Section 2, Phase 3.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then if there's additional, it will spill over into this line, and it's the city of Austin, and that should be Travis County. If you get to a listing appointment and you don't have some of this stuff filled in, guys, Dinko knows this already, but it's not a big deal. Just write it in, because if I'm at a listing appointment, I say, oh, I forgot to put the county in. And sometimes I'll just write it in when I get the paperwork back, known as, but you should have it all filled in before the client signs. And then known as is going to be the actual legal address. So it's 6804 Milliken Cove, and then it's just the zip code. It's not the full address because we've already put Austin up here, and the zip code is here. Now you could put the full address, but what it's really just asking you for is the street address and the zip code there.
Okay.
And then the rest of this, you populate the information up here, automatically populates to the rest of the pages. I do a 6-month listing agreement, and a lot of times, or sometimes people will want to do less than 6 months. So if they say, Knolly, I only want to do 3 months. I say, you know what, Bill, I completely understand. I'm with you, man, because it's not going to take 6 months to sell your house. You already know that. We looked at the CMA. Our office does 6 months, but here's what I'm going to do. You can cancel this agreement at any point after 90 days. That'd be all right? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, well, let's go ahead and put that in special provisions. And then in paragraph 11, I'll just put in there, or paragraph 15, I think it is, seller may cancel this agreement at any time after 90 days.
Okay, so that was my big question, like if we were allowed to do that or not, because
Sure.
I went the online class that I took, they were like, oh, you can't put anything in there. Everything is considered practicing law. Like the lawyers and the bar in Texas got really upset with what agents were writing in, and in Utah we were able to write whatever, man. Like it didn't even matter. So that was we can write in there like, hey, after 60 days, seller can cancel at any time.
Right, and that's in what the class
and
you
that's
went
not
to.
practicing law or anything like that. That's fine because
That's just making an agreement with the seller.
Okay.
The contract, the class you went to was probably talking about the 1 to 4 family contract, which is paragraph 11 of the 1 to 4 family, not particularly the listing agreement.
Okay, and right. I have a question on there when we get to that one. I think it'll help a lot of people.
Because the 1 to 4 family, you have to be very careful what you put in paragraph 11 of that contract.
Okay.
With this here is just an agreement between you and your seller. So it has more leeway than the 1 to 4 family. But generally, you can put anything in special provisions for which there is not a form. Now, if there's a form for it, a promulgated form, then you have to use the promulgated form.
Okay.
So we can talk about some of the do's and don'ts around that. But I like to do a 6-month listing term, and it's just what I've always liked to do.
And you just put like June 1st, it starts the day you go to it, but then you put that the photos will be up. So that way, in case it takes 2 weeks to get it ready, they can't sell it before your listing actually takes place. Or
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I had one, man, where I went to the listing appointment. This is years ago. I think I was about 9 or 10 months in the business. And the people told me that they didn't want to list the house for a couple of weeks. So I took the paperwork, had everything signed, and I post-dated it. And lo and behold, they decided to do something with another agent or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But since I had post-dated agreements, it couldn't stick.
Because their post-dated agreement was before yours or whatever?
No, mine was post-dated. So I post-dated it 2 weeks out. Yeah. So like in the listing term, I put, like I would have put June 15 instead of June.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that okay. I thought I understood that right. That you should put that and then on there, like you put once the pictures are up and ready, then we'll put it on. Okay,
Correct. That's how I do it.
cool.
And then the rest of it's kind of is pretty much already filled out. I mean, there's very little information when you go to do a listing
Yeah,
paperwork. There should be very little information that you actually have to fill in because the template has most of it already there for you.
yeah,
That makes sense?
yep.
Okay, let me save this and get out of that. Oops, can't see. Okay, let's go back. So I can already say it. Okay, cool. Now let's get to your questions, Nico.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. Mine was only the thing like if somebody said, "Hey, I want to cancel after 60 days," or whatever. So that was like the biggest question on the listing agreement. So that would be just put into special provisions. And what can you and can't you put in special provisions like that you've seen through your career since you've been doing it for 10 plus years?
Yeah. So, and by the way, if you can use in zip form, you can use what we call clauses. Clauses are like scripts that have already been filled out. Like here's some that I use. Like if I have a short sale listing, this is a clause that goes in there. Okay. And this is a pretty long clause.
Oh, okay.
Short sales are complex real estate transactions. The Knolly team makes no promises expressed or implied as to the final outcome of your short sale and so on.
Okay.
So, and if I select this one, it'll auto-populate that. I have a couple other clauses here. So you could actually put in standard clauses that you would use ongoing. But like if the seller wanted to do a 90-day listing, the verbiage I would use is seller may terminate this listing agreement at any time after 90 days. And I put in the number of days that they really want to have it listed. And that gives them it's basically,
Yeah. That's what I used to write in, and I would put unless I would say seller can close, especially because in Salt Lake it was such. I mean,
yeah,
everything was selling in a week that was under like 350. So I would just put, hey, if somebody was like really, I'd be like, hey, after 30 days, if we're not under contract, you can
yep,
cancel at any time.
exactly.
I like to add the under contract part
It,
because
Perfect. Yeah, you should add that. Yeah. That's a very good point. Technically, if it's under contract, they can't cancel anyway.
yeah.
So, but it should be spelled out because they might get confused and think that they can cancel after it's under
Yeah,
contract.
I just want to avoid the least amount of lawsuits. Plus plus if you go if somebody wants to bring in a lawyer at that point, it's better for you to just terminate the listing than. But if
Of
it has
course,
verbiage, then you don't, then they can't. So yeah,
of course, yeah. And if it's under contract, you've already earned your fee.
exactly.
That's covered when you get further up here. Because honestly, even if they terminate once it's under contract, they still owe you. So you still get paid.
Yeah,
Like in under paragraph 5, it says that my fee broker's compensation is earned when any of the following conditions are met. So once I meet those conditions, I've already earned my fee.
yeah,
And so that protects you, but to add that in there is better psychologically for the seller. I agree.
yeah,
Now some of the things that you can't, I mean, you can't, you want to avoid writing in legalese, which I tend to do because I used to write contracts when I was in the music business. That's what I
yeah,
did. And so I learned how to write contracts just like an attorney would write them. And then I would take those contracts to my lawyer and have him read over them and bless them. And it saved me a lot of legal fees.
yeah,
In when I got into real estate, I was delighted that we had what we call a promulgated form, which is really a third grade contract. It's a cookie cutter copy paste fill in the blank. So it
yeah,
really made it easy for me. And honestly, there's very little that I would put in
yeah.
special.
There isn't too much. I agree.
It's on a listing. It gets a little more interesting when you're representing a buyer on a purchase. We can cover that too when we get to that. Now, here's what I want to show you is here's a couple other pointers just to keep in mind. Oh, you can't see my screen. Hold on. Let me.
I can see it.
Can you
Oh, I
see?
mean, I guess I can see the little icon above.
Let me get me. Yeah, let me pause the share for a minute. Now you can see me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I go to the listing appointment, obviously I have my folder, and here's typically in front of my folder, I'll have a lot of the the stuff that's in your pre-listing packet. And theoretically, theoretically, they've already gotten your pre-listing packet in the mail. It
Oh,
doesn't always.
so you bring the pre-listing packet with you to every appointment as well?
I don't bring it in this, but
I
what
mean,
I
in your
do,
envelope, like the EXP one.
yeah, yeah. And here's how I do it. I'll just show you since I've got one here, and this is actually Lucas's packet, because I nowadays I don't even take my pre-listing packet with me, but it's a good practice. Um,
Well, since you're recording, does the screen that I only see is, well, I see your little screen up above, but
oh, you do? Okay, hold on.
I still see the contract though mainly.
Okay, hold on.
Now I see you.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let me show you. Let me just show you what um, the way you really want to have it. Okay. So now I've prepped it. So now I don't. So I have this information at the beginning, but I don't review it with them. So if I get the listing appointment, I say, now Dinko, you've already seen all my information, right? What we do to sell homes. Did you have any questions about any of this? And if you say, no, everything looks good, then I just basically pull it out and set it aside. Okay. If I can tell that they haven't reviewed it, I might review it with them very quickly. And if you're new to it, you might spend more time reviewing this stuff. I go in with such a high level of energy and assumptiveness that I'm going to get the listing.
Yeah.
That the energy it's almost like a transfer of energy, and I know they're going to list with me. Like, there's no question. The universe would not have brought us together if they weren't supposed to work. So, obviously you got your marketing plan, your all the information about what you do to sell homes. I mean, the testimonials. We don't call them testimonials. I call them case studies. And then 10 questions you should ask any agent. And then top 4 reasons homes don't sell.
Do you go over any of those?
I don't. But when I was early, so when I first started listing, I would go over it. What I found is that by the time the seller had me sitting in front of them, they were already sold on me. Because I did so many things up front to all the stuff that I teach, mentorship masters,
Yeah.
before I ever got there. Now, if you feel more comfortable going over it, there's nothing wrong with it, because it's an icebreaker.
I think a brief one, like you said, is much better, because if you send it to them and you're like, hey, make sure that you review that. If you keep reminding them, then they'll look at it.
Right.
And they're so, like the appointment that I have today. I told you I sent her the pre-listing packet, and then she was like, yeah, I want to meet with you. You seem like a real go-getter. I mean, the listing packet pretty much sold everything.
Yeah, and honestly, Dinko, when they get the pre-listing packet in, they don't look at that stuff. They glance through it, man.
Yep.
They just go through it like, oh yeah. He looks like he can sell my house.
Yeah.
That's all the whole purpose of it anyway.
Yep, that's all you need.
Yeah. So it's like there's no need to oversell. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I went to the dentist yesterday. I have a cracked tooth, and so he looked it over and he was like, he didn't have to sell me. I'm already in the chair. Yeah. Let me tell you why I'm the best dentist, dude. Just get to it, man.
Yeah, sometimes going over it too much can actually bite you. And
it can make your seller think that maybe you're not as confident in yourself as you. But again, there's no wrong or right about this.
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable going over that stuff with them, but what I do is I just go, now Dinko, you've already seen, was there any questions you had about this? No, I don't have any questions. Okay, great. So let me put this aside, and it kind of showed them that I'm not stuck on myself. Now let's talk about you. The next thing that I do is I go straight to, and this is not really a listing presentation call. It's more of the contracts. So I don't have this in here. But the next thing I go through is the market analysis. So we have to look at price. So we go through the pricing, and I have a lot of stuff on price, how I do the pricing and my scripts and stuff for that in the book, Success with Listings. So then once we get through the pricing, and I can see that and the question that I ask him is, I say, hey, Dinko, so based on all the information that we've seen, we've looked at with the comparables and everything, what price do you feel would create value in the mind of the buyer? What price do you feel would create value in the mind of the buyer? And I just leave them with that question. And then I let them, a lot of times they'll be like, well, I don't know, Knolly, what do you think? Well, let's look at the data together. I mean, we just looked at the data, okay? And then, because honestly, the way psychology works is that when it's their decision, they feel more comfortable about it, okay?
Yeah.
It's the same data. I can make a decision for them. Say, hey, I think 340 is what I think. Now you will have clients where they just trust you to that point, and it's not a problem. I actually teach not to set the pricing, but there's an exception to every rule. Okay.
Yeah.
And if somebody is like, dude, I completely trust you, I know, then you just say, look, here's what the data looks like to me. What do you think? And they say, yeah, it looks the same to me. Okay, great. So let's go with this price here. Like the guy that I'm meeting with tomorrow, he, everything pointed to 340. Okay.
Yeah.
So typically when I go out, I leave the price blank, but we were able to have a good pricing conversation over the phone, which I also teach to never do.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you're doing a lot of I guess when you're one of the legends in the game, you can break the rules.
You really can, man. It's just like I teach people that when you go on a listing appointment, it's a black tie affair.
Yeah.
Not quite, but almost. But when you're let's use Gary Keller as an example. The guy wears T-shirts.
Yeah.
When you're Steve Jobs, you can do that. You just show up a T-shirt.
Yep.
And so a lot of times, if your reputation precedes you, you can get away. People overlook things.
Yeah.
They know I'm quirky. I wear crystal around my neck and I've got ring on every finger. They're like, man, this dude, he just dropped out of a sci-fi movie wearing a hat and all that. But we know he can sell our house, so we'll just overlook it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, the thing is once you tell somebody you got a couple of hundred homes under your belt or a couple of thousand, then what do you really need to?
Yeah. And some of the quirkiest guys that you'll meet in this business, like these celebrity agents, man, these guys are, they're showing up. I wear my earring. When I first got into real estate, I took my earring off for years, and I just wouldn't wear it. And it was kind of a rebel thing that I did when I was, my mom.
I stopped wearing mine too. I haven't worn it in years, man. I think the last time I put an earring on was like right before I started real estate.
Yeah.
Unless I was going out or whatever, and then I don't even know, they might have even closed by now.
Right. And then I just started wearing it, and I was like, hey, but I didn't do that till I had sold a few hundred homes, and I felt comfortable doing it. Now I just, people overlook it, or maybe they don't. I don't know, but they still list with me, so it doesn't matter. So it's just like that restaurant you go to where the chef is quirky and it's just crazy, and you like it for that. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. It might also break that psychological barrier, like, oh, this guy's not in a suit and tie and trying to sell me. He's himself, correct, and he's actually real. So, I guess it could have. And especially once you have the data to back it up, then it's like, oh, this dude is real.
Yeah, in our market, I don't recommend a tie. I used to wear one myself, a bolo tie, but I would recommend, like when I first started, I would wear a sport coat with a nice shirt, but I always wore my jeans, and my boots, and all that. That's just me. But I would wear a nice sport coat, and then when I would get into the listing, because it'd be hot some of these days, and I get in there and I say, Dinko, may I take off my jacket? Would you be okay? Yeah, man, take it off. Make yourself at home. Then I just take it off. So I would make the impression, and then I take it off. you know.
Yeah.
Honestly, man, you
It
show up
doesn't.
in a jacket
It,
in Austin.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter though. I mean, the thing is in Utah, man. It's probably the most. I mean, everybody's always in a suit and tie. I mean, you'll sometimes have kids come to in high school with a suit and tie. I mean, and I just couldn't do it, man. It wasn't me. I didn't like the tie around my neck. I felt like I wasn't as productive with it. And then especially in the summer times, like, it's too hot, man, to wear that stuff. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna wear what I do, and I'm gonna wear my polo. So I mean, I still look professional. And at first people at the office were like, oh, you got to wear this, and that. And then all of a sudden I started selling real estate, and nobody ever told me that I needed to put anything else on again.
Yeah. Yeah. And a nice polo shirt with a logo on it. Perfect.
Yeah,
Or without. I mean, it's
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree 100%. So when I go through the paperwork, this is how I have it stapled. So this is a common question that I get. So I have it in 3 packets. All the template is in 3 packets. The first packet, I'll do them in reverse. So
Man, everything's psychological.
yeah, 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 it really is. So one package is seller's disclosure. Even the way that I stack the forms is important. So the seller's disclosure packet is separate. Okay, that's 5 pages of the seller disclosure that I'm going to leave behind with them. Some people
Okay.
have them fill it out while you're there, but I don't.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is general information and notice to buyer. Now this is not required. This particular form through EXP is not required. When I was at Keller Williams, they required it, so I just got in the habit of using it. And all this is a bunch of definitions, of terms and definitions. That's all it is.
Yeah, we used to have one like that. So yeah, that's what I was looking for, and then nobody was telling me, and then you finally sent it to me, and I was like, yeah, this is what I was looking for. It's not required. So
yeah, it's not required, but it's a good practice because if you thank God I've never
it protects you.
Yeah, exactly. I've never had a lawsuit, but if I did, I'd have that and say, hey, it's in there somewhere. There's so much in there, and they have no problem signing it. When a seller is in the throes of signing paperwork, they just sign it. No problem.
Yeah.
So might as well have it. Every other piece of paper that I need is in this other packet stapled. Okay. Now some people keep them loose leaf. It doesn't really matter, but I like them stapled because if the seller automatically know that the last page in here is the net proceeds. And honestly, that's the only thing that they want to know. They want to know how long is it going to take to sell my house? How much is it worth? And how quick, how long is it going to take? How much is it worth? How much do you charge? Right?
Yeah.
How much am I going to net? Those are the only 4 questions sellers have, really. But I have it in the back of here because if I have to go to it at any point, I just flip right to the back of the packet and say, okay, let's look over what you're going to net. Like the seller yesterday, he was like, man, I need to net. You have sellers that say, I need to net at least this. So I said, well, let me work the numbers and see if we can make that happen. And so I'll kind of go to, so I'll have that as the last page. Now, what I tell them is, I say, now, Dinko, these are what we call promulgated forms. They're just fill in the blank, okay? There's a lot of information in here, but all this information was filled in by attorneys. I didn't put it there. Now, the only information that I put in is what's in blue, okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. And that's the reason why I print these out on my color printer. And I say now, so what that means, Dinko, is all we have to look at is what's in blue, okay? Because that's the only thing I've added to it. That makes sense? Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's go through that. And then I just go through what's in blue. I say, now, Dinko, this is your information. Here's my information. And here's the property description, okay? Now, in this section here, it talks about what's going to convey with the property. And pretty much anything that's attached to the property is going to convey. Does that make sense? Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, great. Just finished page 1. Now, the next thing we want to look at is, I'm not going to tell them, hey, you're in an owners association, so it's checked. I just skip over that. I say, now the listing price we talked about, Dinko, is $340,000. Remember we talked about, now our office does a 6-month term. Is that okay with you? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, great. It's not going to take that long, but that's what we, just what our office likes to have. I won't say requires because that wouldn't be true. Now, Dinko, I do a 6%, 7%, or 8%. Now, I've already looked at your house. It's a great house, but it's in a subdivision, a neighborhood with other like-kind homes. And typically, if I'm doing a 7 or 8%, like for international marketing and you know, I might have to do some overseas marketing, things like that. I'm not going to have to do that stuff with your property, Dinko. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and charge you my lowest rate, 6%. And right then I circle it, I initial. And so you'll have my lowest rate. Mm-hmm. Now, all this says, Dinko, is that my fee is not earned and payable until I get your home sold. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Let's look at the next page. Oh, by the way, Dinko, the only other fee that I charge is the $5.95 transaction fee. May I explain that? Yeah, go ahead and explain it. Well, the $5.95, what that takes care of, I've got a gal, you're going to have a dedicated account representative. Okay, that's somebody that's going to be, while I'm out, you know, listing houses, like right now I'm here with you. Guess what? If your home is for sale, I've got other homes for sale. Somebody is there taking those calls, you know, answering questions, and just really taking care of business. So I've cloned myself. So you're going to have not just me, but another person just like me working on your transaction. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, it's great. Now, I'm not going to charge you double because you have double the work, you know, double the people. It's just going to be an additional $5.95. It's not going to be double, right? Oh, and by the way, you don't pay me anything now. You only pay me when I'm successful. Okay. When the money hits your pocket, that's when I get paid. Make sense? So the $5.95 is not even payable till closing. Okay, great. Now, the rest of this, the next thing we want to look at is, I don't even cover the protection period unless they ask about it. The next thing is, this just says that your property, we're going to place it on the market as soon as you're ready. That's all it says. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, great. Now, the rest of this page, there's nothing that I've added to it, but essentially this says that here's some definitions here, and this says that you're going to give me access to the property. In other words, you're not going to lock me out and make it difficult for me to see the property. You're going to give me access. Yeah, okay, I'm going to give you access. Great. That's all this page says. Now, this next page says I'm authorized to put the key box. We talked about that. I use a super box. They're made by GE. They're bulletproof. I've never tried it, but that's what they say. They can stop a bullet. So they're very, very safe, and only other agents have access to that super box. And by the way, Dinko, that super box is connected to a satellite. So every time that someone keys in on that box, a licensed real estate agent keys in on that box, guess what? I get an email to let me know who won your home. Super safe. And by the way, Dinko, your home will never be shown except by me or another licensed agent. Okay. So now, this just says that I'm going to pay half of what you're paying me to the other agent. Remember we talked about how the commission split? Well, half of what I get is going to be paid to the other agent. I'll be happy to do that. Now, this intermediary says that if someone else from our office brings a contract, you've got to agree to allow that to happen. That's all it says. Because, you know, it could be a conflict of interest. More than likely won't be. But if that happens, you have to sign another agreement allowing that to happen. Okay. Now, the rest of this talks about my authority, you know, certain authorities that you're giving me. This talks about the kind of financing that we can get. And at the end of the day, you really don't care as long as you get your money, right? Now, see how I kind of skimmed through it, Dinko?
Yeah.
And I do it in chunks. So seller representation, all this says, Dinko, is that you're the legal owner of the property. You know, I'm not asking you to look at your driver's license or anything. I'm taking your word for it. You're the legal owner of the property and you have the legal right to sell this house. This says these are additional promises that you promise to cooperate with the sale of the home. Limitation of liability, Dinko, all that says is that if someone gets hurt in your home, now I've sold over 1,000 homes. It's never, ever happened, but you know, attorneys put this stuff in here for worst case scenarios. If someone was to get injured on your property, your insurance would cover it. That's all this says. Now, default mediation attorney fees, those are the standard clauses that every attorney puts in case there's, you know, a ruffling of the feathers in the deal. But it's not going to happen. I'm easygoing. I can tell that you are as well, Dinko. We're going to have a great time together, and we're going to get this home sold. These are other agreements that Texas requires us to put in our contract. Additional notice. Now, the additional notices, Dinko, this is just common sense stuff. You know, we can't discriminate to someone based on their ethnic gender or their color, their background. We can't, like if you have jewelry or prescription drugs, you probably should never had anything stolen from any of my properties, but it's not a good idea to have your gold chain laying out or your prescription drugs easily there where people can see it. And then there's some additional notices there as well. Okay, so that's the agreement. That's the first part of it. And I never call it an agreement, Dinko. I try to call it paperwork. You know, I never say, let's go over the
Yeah.
contract. Let's go over the agreement. Some people do. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just the way I've always done it. I say, hey, let's review the paperwork.
Yeah.
In other words, I don't like it as much as you. Paperwork, right? It's got to be done. Information about brokerage services. What this says is that I represent you and no one else, and I'm going to look out for your best interests. That's what this says right here. Now, this next page, wire fraud. This talks about the fact that there are some scams going around where people are actually doing wire fraud. So you want to be very careful before you wire money, you know, and the title company will give you explicit instructions on how to wire and all that. But this is just a notice to let you know that there's some things going on out there. Now, this here is the net proceeds, and here's how the money plays out. This is, you know, and then I go through all the expenses. Here are the expenses. This amount here carries over to this amount, and then this is what you're going to net. You know, this is roughly what you'll net within probably 500 to 1,000 bucks. Okay. Now there might be some things that come up in title that we don't have. That we
do you fill it? Do you fill it in because they're kind of picking the price? So I mean, they might pick something between 330 and 345. Do you still write in the numbers in there, or do you leave
That's
that
a good
blank?
question. So that's a great question, actually. So I always fill this in with the price that I think it should be. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a dead giveaway. So let's say, for example, like I took a listing last month, I think it was, and I took the listing at $295. Okay. And but I thought that it would sell for around $285. So when I do the net proceeds, I typically will do it at what I believe it will probably be for, you know. And so there's usually a discrepancy on the net proceeds and the list price. Okay. And I tell the seller, it's not a problem. This is just an estimated. You're going to get another one whenever we get an offer on your home and, you know, we go to sell. You're going to get a more accurate. Just giving you a ballpark of if we didn't get, you know, the 375 you're asking for, you're asking 350. If we got 340, this is what you net. Now, if we got 350, obviously we net more. Okay. And they only have to initial this anyway. So you're just initialing that I showed you. You're not agreeing to this price.
And
You know?
that's not a required form, right? The net sheet.
Yeah,
It is a required form.
Yeah, I think the seller's estimated net is required if I'm not mistaken. Let's look on. I don't do my sky slope anymore, so let's just look. Let me share my screen and let's look at it. Okay.
I like the way you go over it. It's actually it's very informative, and it's not like too much. So.
Yeah, a lot of agents will sit there and go over it like word for word, and it's they don't care, man. Like they honestly, a lot of them would just sign the paperwork. Like, but I want them. I feel like I've done them a little service of going through it, but you do it in chunks, you know. And for those of you, you know, watching the video, go back and watch this video over and over, because that's the way that I actually present the paperwork. And literally what I do is, you know, once they're ready, like I don't have them initial each page as we go, because typically sometimes it's a husband and wife, and it would take too long for me to go through it. I just go through everything like I just did. And I say, now, Dinko, did you have any questions about the paper? No. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get your home sold. Let's go ahead and initial. And a lot of times you'll see those telltale signs, like you've seen them, Dinko, where they're like leaning over, like they're ready to initial as you're going.
Yeah.
You know, that means they're ready. So you know, you just it's not like the old days where we would have a pen, you know, drop on the floor and have them pick it up and say, oh, shove the paperwork in front of them, you know, the old school stuff. And so you just go ahead and have them initial every page.
When they circle 6 or you circle 6, do you only have to initial it, or do they have to initial it?
Technically I only have to initial it.
Okay.
Because that's almost like I mean, okay, let me go back. Technically we both should initial.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, as long as I've initialed it, I've agreed, because that's like what I'm charging.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going to go back on me and change it to another number. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd be happy if they did. You know. Okay, let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so I'm going to sign into SkySlope, and then I'll show you. Let me pull. Sometimes I have to figure my way around this thing.
If you click the address thing, it'll pop it up.
Here we go. Okay.
And then just go to checklist at the left. There you go.
I hit the wrong button. Checklist. Here we go. Okay, so
because see, it says if applicable down 16. So it's not required.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. I didn't realize you don't need that. Yeah.
Because I don't, because I like to just, I mean, what I did when I was in Utah is I would just calculate their net sheet on a calculator, and then I would just say, hey, this is, yeah.
Cool. I mean, if that works for you, because you're going to do, I'm so used to the old way that we were required to have these at Keller Williams, and we were actually required to turn in a new one with the contract. I don't know so like if we got a contract on one, you know, then I would have to do a new net sheet.
Okay.
I was like, that's kind of dumb, but you know, it's not a bad idea, you know, for the seller. I mean, especially if they're like, well, I thought I was going to get like, no, I got the net sheet right here, buddy, because they do get amnesia. Sellers do. They do get amnesia on that stuff. So that's how I go through the paperwork with them. And then I know you have some other questions. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes. Okay,
can you see me or you can see my
you?
Okay, you can see me. Cool. Okay. All right. So was that helpful so far?
Yeah, that was very helpful. I think that was great. And then, yeah, I mean, I don't have any other questions. It was really it was mainly the special provision. It was mainly if I wanted to sign it, have the agreement go effective today, but we're not going to put it on the market for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes.
Or whatever. So those were kind of, because in Utah there was none of that. We just literally put it in, and there was like, no, you have to do this. You have to do it. It was 3 pages, our listing agreement.
Wild West. Yeah, I think that's how it should be. And we used to have a 1-page listing agreement. I mean, way before my time.
Yeah.
And it just little by little things would come up where people would complain about this or that or whatever, and lawsuits. And
I think it's those lines. Like what they did in the Utah ones is they lumped them in paragraphs, whereas here there's like the lines and it's like G, C, F, whatever, or it's like 8 A, B, C, D, E. It was all just lumped sum. So I mean, it is what it is. Well, remember, I mean, one thing I said is what's it called? Matrix. I didn't really like it, but it's still very touchy on the back end when you're setting up sheets for buyers and all that. But actually running a CMA, I actually like it more than the higher tech MLS that we had over there.
Okay.
The other one was much better if you're working with buyers. But when it was a little bit, I wish that they would at least let you open up different windows. Like in Utah, we could open up like 5 different MLS windows, so I could jump in between them. But the Matrix one is not touchy, and it's very easy to run a CMA, like very, very easy.
Yeah, it is very easy. And I always, a lot of people don't realize this, but I just do a simple CMA on every listing I take. I do a simple CMA. And it's just 1 page. My CMAs are all 1 page, you know? And then what I'll do is I'll sit with the seller. You taking off? Okay. Adios. I'll call you later. My wife is taking off, y'all. I love you too. She just brought me my elixir. Well, this is not my elixir. These are herbs that I take. We like to take, man, we're like, some people call us extreme, like health nuts.
Yeah, that's actually what me and my wife get called too. People are like, "Oh, y'all gonna live till you're like 100 years old." I'm like, man, you know, you never know. So the body is what you got to take care of.
Yeah. Are you back to working out?
Yeah, back to working out. And I mean, man, I don't like sugars and all that. Sometimes the worst part is like when I go to somebody's house or something, and they're offering me sweets, and I don't really even like. There's very small amount of sweets that I do like.
Yeah.
They're like, can you eat it? And I'm like, no. And then they finally like sometimes pressure me into it, and I'm like eating it, but my body's so not used to sugar, I almost want to puke.
Yeah. I stopped eating sugar about 3 years ago, and I just tell people, no, I can't. I can't do sugar. Like now, they just know. They're like, oh, you don't want any of this, do you? I'm like, because I'm on Facebook with all kind of, really my wife is the healthy one, and I tag along.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long ago I was smoking briskets on the back of the porch. So so I wanted to. There's one other thing. Do you have any question about the simple CMA?
Um, I ran one in Matrix. I don't know if you want to do one real quick for like a minute or two. I mean, I
Well,
don't really need
let
it.
me just show one. I won't do one, but I'll show one because I feel like I can do a whole nother class on CMAs and stuff. But let me just show you um, one that I just did. Well, I'll just open one here. Let's just open a random one. Let's go to. Let's go to. Here we go. So here's one that I recently did, and it's in University Hills. This one's active, and what I tell a person is like usually you'll have active, pending, and solds, and I tell people, this is what people are asking. Okay, that's dreamland, and down here's what they're getting. This is what we call reality. Okay, and so like on this one, this is literally the CMA that I'll take out with me. And what I'll do is I'll pull up on my phone. If there's any question about these and we need to look at the pictures, like if you have an iPad, I just do them on my phone. And I'll actually pull up the properties and show them the actual pictures. Because that's kind of like where the proof is like, okay, let's look at, like this one is on the sale for $484.5. And then now this one sold for $390, this one sold for $400, this one sold for $475. I keep them all within the same subdivision. And I try to keep them all within like, a couple of 100 square feet of each other. And now this one's on half an acre. So that's easily, you can point that out, So really, I just review this. Now, if they have any specific questions around, like I already know what price, even though I'm so big on not going over the price with them and all that, or letting them pick the price. I already know the price. I mean, it's not like I don't know what the price should be.
Yeah.
I just feel more comfortable psychologically because I always like to go to my seller and say, hey, it's not working at your price, is it? I always say your price. That's the language I use. Because they will turn it back over to you. If you pick a price, they'll say, hey, I thought you told me it would sell at this, so I just don't want to, it's their property, and I'm looking at the same data as them. And if I can teach them how to look at the data. Okay. So like, if you look at this data, let me give you an example. And this
one thing that I found that helps me, and I don't know if this is going to help any other people, and I was kind of trained to do it from the beginning, is to always kind of try to get out of the seller what they think their home is worth before I even go to the appointment.
Right.
And the ones that give you an amount, then if they're a little over, a little under, or if they're right at the market value. And the ones that don't want to give it to you, that's going to be a little bit of a harder sell because they're not 100% committed on really selling and they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And then if the ones that really don't, so I would just ask, I'd say, hey, I can like your tax records here are showing that your home's worth that much. Sometimes they can be a little up or down. And there was one that I learned from a different coach is just to say what was it? It was so it's like, hey Knolly, if you were going to win $1 million by realistically guessing what a buyer would pay for your home, what would that amount be?
I like that one.
And then you pretty much get it. So
yeah, I like that one a lot. In my book, I talk about this, that you always want to get the price from the seller before, like you always want to, and I'm so smooth with it now that I don't even know I'm doing it. I'll just say something like, Dinko, so tell me, what do you think your home's worth? I just talk to them like that, like I'm not even. It's not even a script. I'm just asking
Yeah.
them a question, and then they'll be like, "Well, I don't really know. That's why I called you. Well, Dinko, what I'm finding, Dinko, this may not be your case, but what I'm finding is a lot of my clients are very savvy. In other words, they've been on the internet, they've been searching, maybe they've even been on Zillow and some other sites. They're pretty familiar with what's going on. Now, not everybody's that familiar with what's going on in their neighborhood. How familiar are you, Dinko, with what's happening in your neighborhood? And people don't want to be unfamiliar, like not, well, I'm fairly, I kind of know what's going on. Oh, you do? Well, what are homes selling for like yours? And then,
Yeah.
I used to use one, I like the one you just said better, but I used to use one where if they just wouldn't tell me, I'd say, now, Dinko, close your eyes for a minute. Dinko, really, close your eyes. And I know this is weird, you don't know me but now, if you were to reach up and grab a price, pull it down, I want you to reach up and grab a price. Dinko, what price did you grab and pull down? Now, all I'm trying to do is I'm not, with that question, I'm not asking them what they realistically will sell for, but what do they want? Because what they want and what's realistic is two different things. I want to know what's in their head,
Yeah.
And if what's in their head is way different, and that would always work. Like they would always tell me, well, I pulled down this or I pulled down that. If they are willing to play, some of them you can tell right away you can't play with them that way.
Well, some of them, and I've noticed that the ones that really, really don't want to say something, they overvalue. I mean, there was this one guy, he just wouldn't say anything, and he was overvaluing his home. His home was worth and he knew it, like 270. He wanted like 350 for it,
Yeah.
and it's kind of like you're in way la la land, man.
And I always tell them, I say, Dinko, I love that you want 350 for this house. It's great because I'm on commission. So the more you make, the more I make. I want to make as much as possible, wouldn't I? Doesn't that make sense? Oh yeah, that makes sense. So I would love to sell your house not for 350, but for 500,000. Because guess what? I'm gonna get a bigger paycheck the more I sell it for. But here's the thing, Dinko. Whenever the house is appraised, we're gonna have an issue, and we just need to talk about that right now. Now, every time a house is sold, an appraisal. Not every time, but 99.9% of the time, an appraisal is ordered. And an appraiser will have to corroborate what you and I think we want, because we both want the most, because you make more, I make more. And then I just have that conversation with them around the appraisal. And that's something that they really don't forget. It's interesting because I've even had sellers, like I was excited they got more than asking.
Yeah.
And then they call me back all worried, like, is it going to appraise? Crap, I didn't even think about that. But it's a script that I taught them. I'm not worried about it because if it doesn't appraise, at least I can fight the appraisal if I need to, or at least we know we got top of the market still.
Yeah.
So, it's all in how you prep them.
Okay.
So, you got some listing appointments coming up, huh?
Yeah. I got one today. I got one tomorrow, and then I got one on Monday.
Sweet.
The one tomorrow is gonna be tricky. I pulled it up on Google because it was an area that I was told to watch out, that like people get robbed and all that, and it's boarded up. Like there's houses boarded up around there.
Yeah, where's that in Ninth Ward or something?
I think it's over there towards Third Ward. It's over there by UH.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna, and it's a rental. So I think I'm just gonna tell them, hey, I drove past it. The she already told me that the condition's bad. I'm like, hey, let's just meet at a Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah. When they're janky like that, we used to do a lot of short sales, and I would send my guy out to, and he was a bodybuilder, but I would send him out to some sketchy areas. Yeah, very sketchy. But hey, we take everything we can, right?
Yeah.
We take whatever the universe throws at us, and then we run.
Well,
with it.
I mean, they want to sell it, and then they want to move to a suburb for better schools and stuff for their kids and everything. So, I mean, I'm all for helping people out if I can help them out. I wish it was in a little bit of better condition, but I think they bought it in the 90s, so I'm sure they're gonna make out well on it as long as they didn't take any reverse mortgages or anything like that.
Yeah. I picked up a reverse mortgage yesterday. Well, I've known these people for 30 years, and now she's in a nursing facility. And so she needs to sell. And actually, it's going to work out really well. I mean, she has a lot of equity in the house. So.
Nice.
All right. Well, guys, it's been great. Dinko, thank you for being a good sport, man. And
Absolutely.
You've helped to educate many. So that's the leader in you. So I appreciate. Thanks for coming with the great questions.
Yeah.
Has this been helpful?
No, it really has. It was really helpful. And then the only other question that I have is for like the purchase contract. If you're so if like, for example, let's say you're saying the earnest money will be non-refundable after the option period.
Mm-hmm.
So would you write that into special provisions because there's not really an amendment for it, or how did you ever handle that?
Well, you're talking about the actual contract. Let's pull one up real quick. That's a good question. Let's pull one up and let me just go to.
Because in Utah it was really easy. It was just an addendum, and you just pull a blank addendum and you just write in whatever you want.
Yeah. No, not here. So what did I do? Oh, I just got rid of that.
And then there's no counters, right? So that was another weird thing. Like if I sent you an offer, what you would do is you would say counter, and then you would send me back an addendum saying, hey, we agree, but not to this trim, and this trim has to be this and this and that.
No, we don't have forms like that. Yeah. That's kind of a clean way of doing it. It's almost like the amendment we have, but pre-contract type.
Yeah.
But no, we don't have.
The seller should never sign until it's the official agreed. Because I guess back in the day in Texas, they used to like cross things out and then rechange it or whatever.
Yeah, you can still do that. You can still do that here. Yeah, you can cross out. Now you can't. Let me make a caveat to that. You can only cross out what's in blue. Remember we talked about that?
Yeah.
What's in blue. So you can
Exactly.
only cross out what was added. You can't cross out what's in the actual.
Like you could literally cross out, like if they wanted a 15-day option period, you could cross it out, put 10, have your
Correct.
Sellers initial it,
yes.
Sign it, send it back, and then then you would kind of be under contract, but the buyer didn't really agree to that unless they initial it, right?
You can. That's considered a rejection of offer and a counter offer. So
okay.
whenever you make a counter offer, you've automatically rejected the original offer. So
and you still have the seller sign it if you like were crossing out 15 and putting in 10 days.
Yeah, you still would have the seller sign it, but when the buyer gets it, they can just walk away. Like they don't have to respond.
Okay.
Because that's considered their offer was rejected. So a lot of times,
if they initial by that 10-day change, then send it back to you, then it's under contract.
Then it's under contract, correct? Yeah. So it's a bit tricky. So like for what you're talking about, let's say like this is a termination option, and let's say it's $200, 10 days, and the seller says, "Nah, I'm only going to give them 7 days. I don't want to take my house off the market for 10 days." So then you would just if I was receiving this as a listing agent, I would cross out the 10. Write in 7, but honestly, Dinko, what I would do, that's one thing I could do and have them initial, and whatever other changes they wanted, we'd go through and make those. But what I would probably do is just write down a list of changes, and then I just pick up the phone and call the other agent. We always learn that you don't verbally negotiate contracts, but I think that's stupid. Like most of my contracts are verbally negotiated, and then they're set forth in writing. And in my previous industry, we used to have what we call a deal point memo. That's kind of similar to what you're saying, and we would put the main points of the deal before we drew up the contract. So we do things a little bit backward in Texas. It's just the nature of Texas.
Yeah.
You moved here, boy. You better start fitting in. But I would say we are. Americans in general are a little bit backward. You start going to some of these other countries. And we are, man. We're just different. But I can say that being one. So you can anything that's filled in to these blanks can be crossed out, and initialed, and you could do it through DocuSign if you want. Cross things out, change them, and then that's called a counteroffer.
Okay.
Yeah. You had asked me about paragraph 11. Of this 1 to 4 family contract under special provisions. And like it says, insert only factual statements and business details applicable to the sale. Truck rules prohibit license holder from adding factual statements or business details for which a contract addendum, lease, or other form has been promulgated by Texas Real Estate Commission for mandatory use. So the only thing you can, and that's the reason why it's such a small line here, is that you can only put stuff in here that, let me see if I have any, I don't know if I even have any clauses. No, I don't have any. I don't even have any standard clauses for this.
So where would you put, like, for example, let's say you received 3 offers and you were like, hey, earnest, are you confident in your finances? Yeah. Well, earnest money is non-refundable after due diligence. Where would you put that?
That's already in paragraph 5. So actually it's in a couple of places. So in paragraph 5, it says earnest money, within so many days and to who it's paid to. And then the termination option is the only.
Well, no, you know how they have the third party addendum, so they could back out if they don't get their finances or if it doesn't appraise. But how can you, for example, there was a property in Salt Lake that received 7 offers in 24 hours. So what I did is I said, look, buyer is willing to pay $20,000 above appraised value, and buyer is $3,000 of earnest money is 100% non-refundable after the due diligence, which is the option period. So
yeah.
Can you even write stuff like that in Texas at all, or?
Yeah, you can agree to things like that. Technically, it would. I mean, they would have to. It would be their responsibility to run that by their lender to make sure that they can actually agree to that. Because there's going to be certain terms that the lender has that they in other words, they want to make agreements that they can keep. In other words, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the earnest money if the lender can't do the loan, the earnest money doesn't go out of the lender's pocket. So, I mean, in Utah, I never had issues with it, but I just, because Texas, the way they have it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. What you're saying is, So what you're saying is in the event that the deal doesn't go based on appraisal, that they lose the earnest money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be considered in practicing law.
Wow. So that is that. I mean, that was my bread and butter in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, but you don't have to worry about it here because, it's just like if I'm playing the game of Monopoly, even though you don't like the rules, they apply to everybody. So even though you can't use that game, nobody else can either. So it's kind of a level playing field regardless, and it's not, it hasn't thwarted me from selling tons of houses,
Yeah.
But I like that game. Now, let me just say this. I'm not aware of a mechanism. In law, we call these mechanisms, whenever you have a particular clause that would create a scenario like what you're talking about, that's a mechanism. So I'm not aware of any mechanism, nor has anybody even brought that up to me ever. So there might be. I used to have a broker when I was at Remax that he would tell me. He said, "Knolly, there's always a legal way to do it."
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding out the legal way to do it. So there might actually be a way to do that. I just never put my head to it and asked around. I've got a few attorney friends that I can find that out. So if I get this straight, what you're asking is, can you?
Because I mean, in Houston, it might not be that big of an issue, but I mean, in Utah, it was literally like like right now, it's anything under 350. You're probably getting 3 to 10 offers on a house.
Yeah, and because appraisal was killing things because of the people who paid more than it was appraised for. Now let's go through the third party document real quick to show you maybe sort of a roundabout type deal. Let me. There's another addendum I'm going to show you too. I've never really used it, but I'll show you that one. So this is the approval of financing, and then it goes into this clause is not even editable. Like paragraph B, property approval. If buyer's lender determines property does not satisfy.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. So then they could back out, and then they could say, earnest, we'll give you the earnest money, but then the contract says they won't, so they can just not decide not to.
Yeah, let me. There's another form that actually is a bit new. and I haven't actually used it. Let me see. Let me see if it's this one. It may not be. Yeah, here we go. So this form, when did they come out with this one? Doesn't say. But this is a newer form that I've started seeing. And this is addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal.
Okay.
And so I don't know if, let me see, waiver. Buyer waives buyer's right to terminate the contract under paragraph 2B of the third party if property approval is not obtained because the opinion of value. See, you could use this form for that. See, or partial waiver could be buyer waives it if the opinion of value is, X or more. You see, and then the right to terminate, in addition to buyer's right to terminate under paragraph, buyer may terminate within if the appraised value isn't X. So you can see that this third option would be in the favor of the buyer.
Yeah.
These options up here would be in the favor of the seller.
But there's nothing on the, so I guess that was one of them, but there's still nothing on the finance, right? Like, for example, let's say if you have 5 offers, especially like parts of Austin, I know they're very hot, and there's small pockets in Houston that are. So if I have like 3 offers, and let's say the home is 275 and 3 offers that are around 280, and somebody's like, yeah, my offer, I have been on a job for 20 years and blah, 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 and my financing is 100%, approved. Well, if for some reason you lost your job or for some reason you didn't get approved, I don't want you to be able to back out on that. So if you do, then the $3,000 or $4,000 goes to the seller. There's nothing like that in Texas.
There's not a mechanism like that. There may be a way to do it. I don't want to say that there isn't. I've just never done it.
Actually, never mind. I just answered.
I had a buyer. We had a deal in December, about 6 months ago, where we were closing on Thursday. I get a call on Friday that the dude lost his job. Now I got to call my seller, and I told the agent, I said, look, put together an email that I can forward to my seller, because I'm not going to, those are kind of calls it's just too much energy involved in those.
Yeah.
Calls, So you diffuse the energy by getting them to do the job for you. You write up an email. Why am I going to bring that kind of bad news to my seller? Then I'm the guy that brought it. I'm more of the guy like, man, Dinko, can you believe this? Dude, I just got, I'm sending you the email. I'm like, Dinko, can you believe I just got this email? Man, read this and call me. Now we both pissed. now we could be upset at each other, versus me calling you like, hey, Dinko, your home's not going to like, what do you mean? I thought you were a better agent than that.
No, I agree.
It ain't my, So yeah, that's a tricky one.
I like that. Well, actually, I answered my own question. In Utah, we didn't have option period. It was a due diligence. So you could waive your due diligence just like you can waive your option period, but you didn't have to pay for it. Yeah. So in Utah, you didn't pay to have an option period. It was in the contract. So pretty much most of the time you get your due diligence period 7-14 days and you pay $0 for it. So I guess here you could just say, hey, I have 3 offers, option period is $2,000. So I guess that I answered my own question.
Yeah, but it still doesn't open the opportunity for you to keep the earnest money.
Well, no, but I mean, the option period is still yours. So for example, if they were to back out after the option period because of their finances, they gave you $2,000 for the option period. So then
yeah, but here the option period is typically a very nominal amount.
So but can't you choose whatever? Because I've had in my class.
You can choose whatever you want for that. But there's what you can choose and there's what's customary.
Yeah. And
one of the things that you'll find in Texas, and it's probably true everywhere. Okay, so I'm not going to say, but we have a very good old boy. They call me the black redneck, right? Like, because I like playing washers and doing all that. And, you meet a lot of my friends, you'll know what I'm talking about. But in Texas, it's real funny because you'll be talking to somebody, like, for example, earnest money, and we're having a good conversation. Yeah. And I know this is going on a little bit long for some of you guys that are watching this, but this is good stuff to think about. But for example, the seller in Austin typically always pays title policy. Okay. So, but really that's an option.
Yeah.
whether the seller pays, just like a survey and other things are options. Now, if I was to go to another agent here in Austin and say, hey, we want your buyer to pay the title policy, which happens rarely, but on a multiple offer situation, they might throw things around like, hey, the buyer will pay. But very rare, like 99% of the deals I've done, seller paid it.
Yeah.
It's a resale. So so there's things that are considered customary.
Yeah.
And then there's so when you start talking customary, and Texans are real funny, man, when you start messing with customary. So like if you go to someone and say, hey, I'm willing to do it, but you got to put up $2,000 option money. It's just something they've never heard before. So you have to, anybody will swallow the pill. You just have to present it the right way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Utah, they didn't have it. They didn't have it either. But it's just that over there, it's been such a seller's market for the last 5 years that people were getting. I mean, I would write stuff in I would say, hey, you know.
Oh, you got creative.
Yeah, it's like earnest money is non-refundable after 7 days, and we're willing to pay $2,000, $3,000 more than the next competing offer. I mean, you had to like, but I mean, I was pretty much practicing law in the state of Texas, right?
Yeah, and that's the reason why is that, like I said, if there's something that you particularly want to do, like you can use the option period clause to do that. Like you can throw in $3,000 in the option period.
Yeah.
I've never actually thought about that, but yeah, of course you can do it. There's a way to do it. In other words, that's probably the easiest way, but there might also be a way to make the earnest money non-refundable through some way.
Well, they came up with the appraisal stuff because I think Austin had a lot of issues, and I think that addendum was brought in because of Austin's issues.
Of course. Yeah, and that addendum you can use to can you see me right now? Am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah, I can see you. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that addendum can be used now for that. I've never used it. I've yet to use. I've actually had an offer. I actually had a contract submitted to me where that addendum was there, and we went ahead and accepted it because we didn't feel like there was going to be an issue. But I had one that closed in December as well, that the house appraised for like $40,000 less than what we sold it for. But the thing is, it was a very unique property in that the guy had done about 80 to 90,000 in ADA upgrades. You know, he was in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
He had one of these like electric wheelchairs, and so he had, I mean, you name it, but the appraiser wouldn't give him any credit for any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But the buyer just so happened to be also disabled and needed all that stuff. And rather than him spending 80, 90,000, he'd rather pay 40,000 more than the home was worth. So he just brought the extra money to closing. It was not a problem, you know? So it can be done. It's just a matter of how do you put their feet to the fire.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be, it's not going to be that big of an issue here. I mean, the average Houston, I still haven't found a neighborhood that sells faster than 22 days, and all of Utah is like 11.
Yeah.
I mean, and and that's not even true because people take 6-7 days to negotiate their multiple offers. So really, dude, the average house on the market is like 7 days.
Yeah. Yeah. The advantage that you're going to have in Houston is that when you start implementing the tactics that I'm teaching you, and along with the tactics that you already know, you're going to stand out head and shoulders above the other agents do. Because most aren't doing this stuff, even in Austin, aren't doing the stuff that I teach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even in Salt Lake, the disadvantage there is like they may devalue agents because of how hot the market is.
You know? Oh, they do. I mean, there was a even though they'd end up losing money still with it or kind of breaking about even, but having to do everything. There was a flat fee company, a high-tech company that came out. And I mean, the thing is you throw up a house, and I mean, people are so desperate. They're just willing to pay what, I mean, nobody in Utah ran comps. When you put an offer in, nobody ran comps. There was no thing like, oh, comps are saying this and comps are saying that. It's like, dude, you want the house or not? Because if you don't, just walk away.
That's like California was. Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah, they're saying Salt Lake since I can't remember, man, but I don't know if it was since 2006 or 2009 or something like that. Salt Lake has been appreciating faster than San Francisco.
Wow. It's a pretty town. I mean, I was there last year. It's a real beautiful place. So, well, guys, we're at the end of our call. I know we're rambling a little bit, but
cool, man.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and then Dinko and I will kind of hang out. But hopefully, guys, this has been very helpful to you, just in understanding the Texas contracts and the way I present them, and some of the tips that Dinko has shared with you as well. And hey, we love you, Mentorship Masters. We're here for you, and we're here to help each other. That's why we're doing this.